making sure that things are not covered up before we approve it. I can't imagine approving something, covering things up until it's approved. That doesn't make sense to me.
I think the general flavor here, Mike, is that you gotta go out there and make sure everything is being done according to the rules. And if it's not, then we've got to take whatever action is necessary to bring it into conformance. So I think at this stage, I thank you for bringing this up.
Well, it's just pictures and pictures.
I know.
And everybody just ignored it. You know, it's just, I mean, I'm working with Dennis now, and I'm finally thinking somebody will help us. Because these pipes, they go to the corner of the property, and they're open pipes. They're just laying on the ground. And you know where they're going to go? They're going to go right down my property line, underneath my fence, into my property.
I think what I've said to Mike is he's got to make sure that all of these things are done according to the town ordinances. And I think you should contact the neighbor here and make sure that you can answer her questions as well. But I think we've got to continue now, so thank you very much.
Just one more thing about the grading. That guest house that he has now, we always call it the lake because it was lower, and that's where all the water kind of gathered from the last property. He has raised that property, that level, high. I mean, it must be 2 or 3 feet higher than what it was before. We've lived there for 25 years. We know that back property well. So somebody should look into that.
Well, I think both Dennis and Mike, we got to look into this and make sure that we're not being conned by this kind of thing.
Thank you very much.
No, we can't have any more discussion.
I just wanted to make one public comment. When you guys are doing screening and you're planting things like redwoods that grow 60 feet high, first of all, our neighbors did that behind us. We have to go to Comcast soon because we can't get dish network. Our swimming pool's back there, they're 6 feet. I'm all for building, I'm all for a lot of things, but our neighbors did it behind us when they put in those redwoods that are going to get 60 feet high. I'm not going to be able to, in 2 years, use any dish network. I'm going to have to go strictly Comcast because their trees are blocking. Their trees could possibly block any form of sunlight I'll have in my backyard. Not to mention it's going to be a nightmare for my swimming pool. So I'm asking, when you're planting things that closely, it's great to say, oh, let's put up a 60-foot redwood tree, but living that close to a 60-foot redwood tree in the wind and all that, I end up cleaning it up on my property, and I end up doing this and I end up doing that. And when, like I said, when I can't get basic dish network, and Comcast is going to have to hold me hostage, and I can't use my swimming pool because their trees are too high, and I'm not even sure if we ever redo our house, if we're going to be able to put solar panels on top, because the way the sun goes, it's going to affect the solar panels. So I'm just asking, if the houses are 30 feet high, couldn't you consider maybe doing screening that would be a little bit more realistic, not to invade on the other person's use of their property?
I think what you're asking is, could we have our general plan consider landscape screening in terms of the effects of that various screening on adjacent properties?
Right.
Like if you don't plant a redwood tree 2 feet from the property line, because it's not just going to affect your property, it's going to have extremely adverse potential effects on the
Huge effects. I mean, I would be devastated, but I like the fact that he's building and all that, but I wouldn't want that. And I'm not being mean, I'm not trying to, make it more difficult for him, but that's really an invasion of space. And other cities have solar laws where you can't have your trees so high, and if you do, if the neighbors say cut it down to this height, you actually have to pay for it if it's on your land, and you have to cut it down to a certain height.
That is something we should consider.
We do have that law. That's not a city law, that's a state law.
Oh, it is? Okay, if somebody can get with me on that, that'd be great. Because
anyway, are there any other public comments on this issue?
Just briefly, again, I think this is something where the fact that we've had a town arborist who's been with us for over 20 years, who kind of understands the history of all these different conflicts and screening and how to deal with trees and tall trees and short trees and oak trees and all these things. Again, I'm extremely concerned about losing her because I think she's just been such a valuable asset to the town, and I know the Planning Commission really relies a lot on her input, and she is really instrumental in helping with a lot of these types of issues that come up. So again, I'd like to have us consider keeping her as one of our employees. Thank you.
Okay, but no other public comments, I'll bring it back to the council. I think we've discussed this quite a bit. I don't know if we need any action on this. I guess we don't need any action on this, so we'll go on to item number 33.
Could we simply ask that Dennis, you send us a report by email as to those enumerated issues and what the status is?
Yes, I will.
Okay.
And Mike. And Mike. And you know, I think that, again, before the end of this month, even though we don't have a council meeting, we need a full report.
Exactly, that's what I'm saying.
Okay, item number 33 is the adoption of a resolution rescinding the general fund reserve policy. Louise, would you like to comment on this one?
I will just give a brief history. Staff is asking council to approve a revised fund balance policy because the issuance of GASB 54, which changed the way how the fund balance for governmental fund will be reported in the financial statement for the audit. By adopting a new fund balance policy, the changes will be reflected in this upcoming fiscal year 2011 audit report. I want to point out the significant change between the current adopted fund balance policy and the revised policy is just as staff is recommending changing, instead of having a budget stabilization fund and a working capital reserve, to combine those two together and just set a minimum fund balance policy for general fund at 20% of annual actual general fund operating expenditure.
I have to say, Louise, that their new language of non-spendable, restricted, committed, assigned, and unassigned, having read it, I thought I'd rather have a Greek course.
Yeah.
They are absolutely ridiculous.
I think the intent is to make it more clear, but even I read it and said, what is that? So it took me a long time to digest the whole GASB 54.
I would like to ask, Louise, when we passed the current resolution, we did it intentionally to keep it flexible, right? We didn't want to put it in a totally restricted fund, right?
Right.
Is this going to now make it go into a totally restricted fund, or do we still have that flexibility? How is that going to work?
The staff is recommending the only thing that will be committed is that 15% for disaster preparedness, and that will require, any time that the council wants to use that fund, it will require a vote of the council. And to remove that 15% committed restriction, the council can do that full resolution. And that is, staffing is because of the value of the town property. It's a good idea to have a 15% reserve for disaster, that in case we have an earthquake or thing that the council declare as a disaster. As far as the 20% unassigned fund balance, actually is giving the council more flexibility because it only takes a majority vote of the council to use the fund balance, but at the same time to safeguard the town's finance going forward, is setting a policy saying no matter what, the town will always maintain a 20% fund balance. The reason staff is recommending a 20% is because 20% is about 2 months of our operating expenditure.
Any other comments from the council? Any other public comments? If not, I'll bring it back to the council and ask that we approve the resolution.
Move approval.
I'll second.
All in favor? Aye. Okay. Next item is item number 34. And before we go to item number 34, I think it would be appropriate if our city manager makes a few opening comments on this.
Thank you, Mayor, council members. The budget you see before you is a result of my determination to not submit another shortfall budget to the council that required that you had to go into fund balance to make it balanced. It also is a commitment in good faith negotiations and not knowing ultimately what the final business plan for the city will be. I would call this an interim bridging budget because we're going to have to come back to you in the near future, I hope 90 days or less, that once the dust settles on whether we're going contract, whether we're going a hybrid model, or we keep it status quo, that we have to come back to you and give you a more normalized looking budget and one that's gone through the finance committee pursuant to your typical protocol. I would add that the budget has the same safety and restrictions in it in terms of expenditures, that everything will continue to go to council for approval as it has in the past. I just didn't want to designate specifically some of the subcategories until such time as this is resolved and the budget is balanced to the best of your abilities. And so that's why you're seeing a rather unusual looking budget, certainly not to hide or to influence, but to make it flexible.
Okay, council members?
Well, John, I agree with the methodology that you've used in putting one together. I endorse 100% that we do something, and we actually put a stake in the ground that within 90 days we will have a revised budget. I think that that's probably a reasonable request. There are some subcategories that actually did get populated in the budget, and I think that, you know, to move forward on any of those items, I think is, other than maybe a 30-day look forward, I don't think would be appropriate. So, departmental-wise, the department totals and the sum total and the results of that from my reviewing of the document seems in line with what we talked about at the beginning of May and the direction that the Finance Committee offered you on the 11th of April to come back with a budget, but again, the details, as you pointed out, are not set, so hopefully the department heads won't be executing to those per se, but we need something to move forward with today. So, so thanks for you and Louise, you know, doing the best you can based on where we are today, and but let's go ahead and make a hard line, not hope that we're going to get something within 90 days, but 90 days or sooner is where we need to be at. I'd like to recommend. Thank you.
Kathy?
No, I've had my questions answered, thank you.
Sherry?
I think Bill considered it well.
Yeah. And Elizabeth?
It is a very unusual looking budget. It's hard for me to, you know, accept something like this because it, as Vice Mayor Whitmer said, while a number of the items are populated, I don't want to really act on those until we approve the entire budget. And there are holes in the budget, placeholders that are yet to be filled in, having to do with the reduction in force or what we're anticipating maybe not doing a reduction in force or what comes out of the negotiations. I feel that the service that we're in, it's not just a numbers business. We are in the people business in our town. We are in the high-end residential community business. Our property values are what we hold dear to us, and it's really what we have. And us as council, we should be stewards of the property values in the town of Atherton, the safety of our residents, the personal safety, the physical safety, and you know, it's just not a numbers game, it's a people's game too. So I think that we're really needing to be very, very careful in what we do and how we try to balance the budget. It's clear that the way it's going, our reserves would be eaten up, so we have to do something. And I'm putting my faith in our interim city manager and the rest of my council members who are looking at this very closely, and that we will do the right thing for the entire town of Atherton. So I give you my support on that.
Any public comments? If there are no public comments, I would ask, I would make a motion to approve this, recognizing what our city manager has said, that we will have a much more definitive budget in 90 days or before. So, second, all in favor? Next item is item number 35, adoption of the appropriation limits for 2011-2012. Again, Louise, this is your item.
This is just standard because of the proposition 4 and 111. Anytime the town take in property any tax proceed, we need to do a calculation to make sure our tax revenue is not in excess of what is allowed by the California Constitution. Staff had calculated the limit for fiscal year 2012. Because of Measure T, we can adjust our again limit by 1.5 times for the parcel tax we're going to take in. So that if the council would look at the calculation, we come right within and actually below the GAN limit. So we will be, if the council approves the resolution, basically we are certifying that our tax proceed is within the GAN limit.
Okay, I'll bring this back to the council. Any comments? No comments? Any public comments? No public comments. I will then now ask, I'll make a motion that we approve item number 34.
A second.
All in favor?
That's
35.
135.
Item number 36 is, again, yours, Louise, and this is really just an approval to continue to use the parcel tax that goes until 2014, but you want to comment on this, Louise?
Sure. This is the same as fiscal year 2011. The staff is asking the council to approve the resolution finding that we need the parcel tax for the police services and general capital. And based on the recommendation made by the Finance Committee to the Council, 60% of the parcel tax is being allocated for police services and 40% for CIP. This is the second of the 4th year parcel tax because by June 30th of 2014, the parcel tax was sunset unless we have another voters' approval. Once approved by the council tonight, staff will work with the county to make sure that all the property tax parcel will be levied and the tax will be collected through the secure property tax bill.
Bring it to the council. No comments, public? No comments. I will ask a motion to approve item number 36.
So moved.
All in favor?
Second?
Second.
Second? All in favor?
Aye.
We'll now go to the items that were removed from the consent calendar, and then we start with item number
37, we have to do number 37.
Well, I was going to handle the ones, first of all, that were removed from the consent calendar, but I'm happy to do it either way.
Oh, before the garbage thing?
Yeah.
All right, let's go to item number 37. John?
Yes, Mayor and Council, this is in response to concerns over trash cans being left out in an untimely manner. And before you is a sample ordinance with, that has administrative fines that could be attached to it at a later date.
It creates a new city code section.
It does create an entire new city code section. And if this is acceptable to you and you direct staff to proceed forward, then we'll go ahead and in the next go around attach some sort of punitive fines or warnings that would be associated with it, or not.
And you mentioned previously that the plan would be to make administrative fines so that if there were issues or special circumstances that they could be waived or easily mitigated and tracked from that point.
Well,
Here's the appeal process.
Yeah, correct. The whole idea was to make this not informal, but in the event of extenuating circumstances, someone didn't pick a can up, the neighbor had promised to do it, you know, as I had mentioned to some of the council members earlier today, meetings, that this is not meant to target citywide in some sort of a punitive way over the whole trash can situation, but we continue to receive complaints over perpetuating problems on certain streets in town that seem to never get these issues resolved. We hope we can do it with warnings first, and then we'll move into these administrative fines, which are appealable.
And you and I discussed earlier today that, and perhaps you could elaborate for the other council members, that versus the way it's written here, where it would be under code enforcement, perhaps it needs to be some sort of auditable, as opposed to just get a phone call and go out, but some sort of roving, so we need to come up with a different methodology for trying to enforce this. Did you want to just chat briefly about that?
Right, we had discussed the difference between proactive and reactive enforcement. And although code enforcement tends to be almost exclusively a reactive issue, I think we've built up a fairly solid database of where the most egregious infractions seem to happen over and over. That will probably be proactively addressed, initially with warnings. You know, please take the cans inside. You have 24 hours to do that, as stated in this ordinance. I will expect that this is going to settle down very quickly, and then after that, it will be on a more reactive basis based on complaints.
Thanks for doing this.
Other council members?
I wasn't quite sure about the 12:01 a.m. Start date. Typically in our neighborhood, the morning before, people put out their cans and usually collect them the same night that the collection starts, but the collection starts very early in the morning.
It was changed. They changed it to 24 hours before and 24 hours after. Elizabeth?
I have a problem with this. I just think that we're kind of crossing a line and becoming more of a police state than we should. You know, I know that it's been a rough 6 months with the introduction of the new garbage can pickups and things. I just think that we're adding another layer of police, you know, and code enforcement. If we've got a code enforcement officer, as we have now, why can't he go out and the egregious violators, you know, in his charming way, talk to them and get them to change their behavior? What we're doing here is creating a whole other section of municipal code violation ordinance or something, and it just seems like it's overkill to me. I don't think it's that widespread throughout the entire town. I think there are several specific instances that, you know, could be handled differently. That's just my personal opinion.
Well, I think that it may not be widespread, but the problem is you can't really ask the people who are really egregious in a nice way, because they're really egregious. Even if he asks in a nice way, they're probably not going to do anything unless we have an ordinance. Now, I would hope that this doesn't create massive problems for everybody, and just like the rocks and a lot of other things we have, he doesn't go out and target everybody with rocks. So I imagine that would be the case here. I mean, he's not going to go around and have a stopwatch and say it's been the 25th hour, you're ticketed. But I think it's worth a try. If there are lots of complaints and people don't like it, we can always reassess it, but it's something that is worth considering given the fact that we have had problems. My issues are, what if it's, and Bill, I think we need to, what if it's not necessarily a Recology container? What if it's an old BFI container that people have put out, which they don't? Yes, it says supplied by the town's waste collection franchisee, such containers. So it seems to refer.
Well, it can be what we want it to be. Typically, when the franchisee comes in, they require that you use their can because it mates up to their trucks.
Yes.
And if it doesn't, you know, it's a problem.
Well,
but as far as look, I think as far as interpreting this, I think that the concept is that if the can's out there and it's being picked up, we're fine with that. It's not supposed to be punishing that, it's supposed to be punishing the concept of leaving it out and being an eyesore.
it's just the language doesn't say that, so we'd have to change it, such or any other container left out.
Yeah, except you don't want to do that either, because then you'll get a round can that they can't pick up. So we have to, it has to be an approved can, it has to be approved by Recology.
Yeah, but people are leaving other cans out, or even if it's the 24, the big pickup that they have. People start leaving it out for the big pickup a week or two in advance.
Yeah, we can certainly look at that and make sure Recology is happy with it, because they're the ones that have to be
All
able
I'm
to pick
saying
it up.
is you have to make sure that it's encompassing the sorts of things that it's not necessarily their can, and it could be left out. And the other thing is, containers must be placed so that they do not obstruct the right-of-way of street traffic. Remember, it may not be the homeowner who's obstructing the right-of-way with these containers. It may be Ecology who's obstructing. And I've got to say that in a few cases, it has been Ecology, where you have to weave around the cans that are in the street after it's been picked up, not before, because it's very neat before. So you don't want to be assessing the homeowner. You want to assess Ecology, and you might very well make it so that the code enforcement officer calls Ecology and they have to pay a fine. So, you know, maybe that's not a bad thing to notify too.
Read literally, that would be the case.
Mayor Donnelly, I just have one question after council.
And then my question was, you know, you talk about all of this and where is the fine, and you said if this were to be adopted, then you would proceed with having.
By resolution, yeah.
Okay. And that was my only other question. So that's it. Thank you. Oh, it says waste containers must be removed to an appropriate storage location on the premises, and I just wondered what's appropriate.
I don't think that we have one now, but I will tell you right now, if you don't say that, somebody will move it 1 foot inside their property just to irritate their neighbor, and we need to have something for the code enforcement to go out and say, you know what, that's right out in the front yard setback, it's not really looking good, and move it back to someplace. And there's going to be some staff discretion here. If it becomes a problem, they can certainly come back, but I try to anticipate it.
All right. Thank you.
My other question or comment was that it's talking about the fiscal impact. It's talking about a $20,000 a year fiscal impact, and I was wondering if that was in the current budget that we just interim budget. Yeah, so I'm just wondering where that money's going to come from, especially since you've cut the environmental programs committee budget by effectively that much. So I really feel that we can do a lot more in our environmental programs committee with that budget rather than the code enforcement, 20,000 a year.
I have also a comment before I open it to the public. This is an item where I probably have had more complaints about garbage cans being left out than I have any other issues. So certainly by my emails, by what people have talked to me about, many residents are very concerned about it. And I would also mention that tonight all we're doing is that we're recommending that we have a public hearing in this, so we're not making any decisions tonight. And so I will now open up to the public.
This is introduction.
First reading, right.
First reading, so there's first, second, and then.
Right.
Okay, I have real issue with this one. I think you should enforce the rules that you have on the rocks on the safety of the street. A lot of times where people have had bushes or trees all the way out to the gutter, that's why the trash cans are in the street. We have people on our street, because I know you guys know our street by heart. They took up public land, they built fences on public land, and they put their trash cans behind them. One person has a full-blown structure to store their trash cans in right out on the street. It looks better, it's fine, but I really don't, what seems to happen in this town is people tend to target people. It's like when I met with John and he said, okay, we're not really going to actively go after the rocks or go after people that build out further, but if you want to give me names of people, and then it doesn't become a rule. It becomes certain people being targeted and other people not being targeted. I don't think that's fair. I think if you had already enforced the rock rule and the street right-of-way rule, I think then you'd be able to come up and say, hey, we've enforced it here. And wouldn't the trash cans being left out in that section anyway be covered underneath kind of more of the setbacks? Because a lot of people have built out to it. I don't know, but you're not enforcing the rule that you have, and now you're talking about fining us. But you're talking, when I met with John, he said, give me the people's addresses. It seems like it's kind of corrupt when some people can have something and some people can't. And it just doesn't seem fair to fine people when you're not enforcing the rules you have.
Any other public comments?
Yeah, I guess I was thinking exactly the same thing that Kathy McKeithen said about ecology. I mean, I live on Station Lane, my driveway backs up to it, and every single week I come back, they have taken the trash cans, dumped it over, and my trash cans are in the middle of the street. I don't come back until later in the evening, but it's not me that's leaving the trash cans in the street. They just dump them, and they do not pick them up. So if you're going to put any kind of code enforcement, I think that they should have to be a fine as anybody else. That's my first point. But I don't really honestly like the idea of putting fines or putting control, just like Elizabeth Lewis just said. I just feel like it's just adding more fuel to the fire. And I understand there's some complaints, but I mean, I'll just give you an example of how our neighborhood, we've had no issues with people being upset with each other's trash cans. And as a matter of fact, one of our neighbors, he left his trash cans out 2 nights, and an entire neighborhood was calling to make sure he was okay, that he hadn't had a heart attack, because he always brings his trash cans in. So it was a way for us to know, to take a tab on whether or not this person was okay. We have other elderly people on our street that we've, for years, helped bringing the trash cans and so on. So I think that it can be people work together in a lot of places too, and I just hate to see it be something where we're putting more rules and more regulations and more, money spent on trying to, have one neighbor fight against another neighbor. And I guess I understand what you're saying, Jim, that you get a lot of emails and stuff about it. So it'd be nice to find some sort of a way to allow someone to request that people behave in a better way, rather than having it be one more thing where we're fighting against the neighbors. I don't know, I just have a real problem with that. But,
Any other comments, John?
John Ruggiero, Stockbridge Avenue. Regarding the garbage can being out of situation, in the area where I live, there's 6 or 7 rentals. The absentee landlords are technically responsible for these cans. They rotate tenants quite often. There's tenants, people in that area that'll leave the cans out 24/7, as well as some homeowners also. But a lot of these violators are not even aware of the garbage can situation, how long they're supposed to be out there, in or out. You don't know who puts them out. Some of these residents have 10 and 12 tenants with automobiles to match. But if you're going to do anything regarding these, you have to deal with the owner of the property, which also could, as Mr. Cushing, your ordinance officer, told me, can be held responsible, whether he's there or not, as creating the public nuisance. But that's a big part of it, is people that are unaware of this, that rotate in and out of these homes.
Mr. Mayor, just to be clear, this ordinance as it's drafted would target owner, any tenant, or any occupant. And so it's aimed broadly to where, quite frankly, a violation, if it becomes prodigious enough and long enough and big enough of a pain in the city, it can be the owner that's cited, it can be the tenant that's cited, or both of them that's cited.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other public comments? Okay, I will now bring it back to the council, and I guess in this case, what we have to approve the first reading is this procedure, so I would ask for a motion to approve the first reading.
I'd like to move that we approve the first reading with a few of the additions that we brought up before.
Okay.
The size of the container.
Mr. Mayor, we have to read the title, City Clerk?
Okay.
Operating
session.
It's an ordinance of the City Council of the Town of Atherton adding Chapter 12.16.040 of the Atherton Municipal Code regarding requirements for the storage and removal of recycling, composting, and garbage containers.
Okay, can I have a motion to approve the first reading?
I move that we approve the first reading.
Second?
With the understanding that we would clarify the size of the container, the type of the container, as well as the fact that if it's the fault of Recology that they're obstructing the right of way, they'd be fined, not
Okay.
the homeowner.
All right, have a second with these amendments. All in favor? Opposed?
Opposed?
Okay. We'll now go to the items that were removed from the consent agenda, and I guess the first one was item number 11. And I guess you were the one that removed this, Bill?
Yes. I had several conversations today with both John and with our council, Bill. I'd like to have the council consider and discuss that perhaps the representative to the ABAG not be the finance director, but either remain with the city manager's office, or perhaps, since a lot of our issues with an association with ABAG covers some of our lawsuits, etc., that perhaps the assistant city attorney be asked to represent us, at least in the interim, until we decide how to move forward on a more permanent basis. It's not a slight of having Louise go do it. Louise is very busy making the budgets and participating in a number of activities, and it seems to me that and through discussions with Bill, he can comment that that may be a good role for the assistant city attorney to participate in those, at least initially.
Council, any comments on that?
I'd like to hear from John on this.
Well, I actually had suggested that it be Louise, because I believe this is the actuarial.
I attended the board meeting today, an annual meeting based